No, because infinite scroll confers power to Twitter at getting people to scroll longer, which is their business model. And so Facebook's also going to do infinite scroll, and then TikTok's going to come along and do infinite scroll. And now everybody's doing this infinite scroll, and if you don't coordinate the race will end in tragedy. So that's how we got in Social Dilemma, the film, the race to the bottom of the brainstem, and the bottom of the brainstem and the collective tragedy we are now living inside of.
One way of diagnosing like all of the biggest problems that humanity faces, whether it's like climate or whether it's opioid epidemic or loneliness, it's because there's we're doing narrow optimization at the expense of the whole, which is another way of saying disconnection from ourselves, from each other.
What do you mean by that? Narrow optimization at the expense of the whole?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you optimize for GDP and more social media addiction and breakdown of shared reality is good for GDP, then we're going to do that. If you optimize for engagement and attention, giving people personalized outrage content is really good for that narrow goal, the narrow objective of getting maximum attention, causing the breakdown of shared reality. So in general, when we maximize for some narrow goal that doesn't encompass the actual whole, like social media is affecting the whole of human consciousness, but it's not optimizing for the health of this comprehensive whole of our psychological well-being, our relationships, human connection, presence, not distraction, our shared reality. So if you're affecting the whole, but you're optimizing for some narrow thing, that breaks that whole. So you're think of it like an irresponsible management, like you're kind of operating in an adolescent way, because you're just caring about some small narrow thing while you're actually affecting the whole thing. And I think a lot of what motivates our work is when humanity gets itself into trouble with technology, where it's not about what the technology does, it's about what the technology is being optimized for. We often talk about Charlie Munger, who just passed away, Warren Buffett's business partner, who said, if you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Meaning, we to go back to our first conversation with social media, in 2013, when I first started working on this, it was obvious to me, and obvious to both of us, we were working informally together back then, that if you were optimizing for attention, and there's only so much, you were gonna get a race to the bottom of the brainstem for attention, because there's only so much. I'm gonna have to go lower in the brainstem, lower into dopamine, lower into social validation, lower into sexualization, all that other worser angels of human nature type stuff to win at the game of getting attention. And that would produce a more addicted, distracted, narcissistic, blah, 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 everybody knows society. The point of it is that people back then said, well, which way social media is going to go? It's like, well, there's all these amazing benefits. We're going to give people the ability to speak to each other, have a public platform, help small, medium-sized businesses. We're going to help people join like-minded communities, cancer patients who find other rare cancer patients on Facebook groups. And that's all true, but what was the underlying incentive of social media? Like, what was the narrow goal that it was actually optimized for? And it wasn't helping cancer patients find other cancer patients. That's not what Mark Zuckerberg wakes up every day and the whole team at Facebook wakes up every day to do. It happens, but the goal is the incentive. The incentives, the profit motive was attention, and that produced the outcome, the more addicted, distracted, polarized society. And the reason we're saying all this is that we really care about which way AI goes. And there's a lot of confusion about, are we going to get the promise, or are we going to get the peril? Are we going to get the climate change solutions and the personal tutors for everybody and, solve cancer? Or are we going to get like these catastrophic, biological weapons and doomsday type stuff, right? And the reason that we're here and we wanted to do is to clarify the way that we think we can tell humanity which way we're going, which is that the incentive guiding this race to release AI is not. So what is the incentive? And it's basically OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. They're all racing to deploy their big AI system, to scale their AI system, and to deploy it to as many people as possible and keep outmaneuvering and outshowing up the other guy. So like, I'm going to release Gemini. Google just a couple days ago released Gemini. It's this super big new model. And they're trying to prove it's a better model than OpenAI's GPT-4. Which is the one that's on ChatGPT right now. And so they're competing for market dominance by scaling up their model and saying it can do more things. It can translate more languages. It can, know how to help you with more tasks. And then they're all competing to kind of do that.
So the real issue, and this is one of the things that we talked about last time, was algorithms. that without these algorithms that are suggesting things that encourage engagement,
Yeah.
whether it's outrage or, I think I told you about my friend Ari ran a test with YouTube where he only searched puppies, puppy videos. And then all YouTube would show him is puppy videos.
Right.
And his take on it was like, no, people want to be outraged. And that's why the algorithm works in that direction. It's not that the algorithm is evil. It's just people have a natural inclination towards focusing on things that either piss them off or scare them or
Well, I think the key thing is in the language we use that you just said there. So if we say the word people want the outrage, that's where I would question. I'd say, is it that people want the outrage or the things that scare them, or is it that that's what works on them? The outrage works on them, the fear works on them.
It's not that people want it, it's that they can't help but look at it.
Yeah.
Right, but they're searching for it. Like my algorithm on YouTube, for example, is just all nonsense. It's mostly nonsense. It's mostly like I watch professional pool matches, martial arts matches, and muscle cars. Like I use YouTube only for entertainment and occasionally documentaries. Occasionally someone will recommend something interesting and I'll watch that. But most of the time if I'm watching YouTube, it's like I'm eating breakfast and I just put it up there and I just like watch some nonsense real quick. Or I'm coming home from the comedy club and I wind down and I watch some nonsense. So I don't have a problematic algorithm. And I do understand that some people do, but...
Well, it's not about the individual having a problematic algorithm. It's that YouTube isn't optimizing for a shared reality of humanity, right? So, and Twitter is more...
How would they do that?
Well, actually, so there one area. There's the work of a group called More in Common. Dan Vallone is a nonprofit. They came up with a metric called perception gaps. Perception gaps are how well can someone who's a Republican estimate the beliefs of someone who's a Democrat, and vice versa. How well can a Democrat estimate the beliefs of a Republican? And then I expose you to a lot of content, and there's some kind of content where over time, if after like a month of seeing a bunch of content, your ability to estimate what someone else believes goes down. The gap goes bigger. You are not estimating what they actually believe accurately. And there's other kinds of content that maybe is better at synthesizing multiple perspectives, right? That's like really trying to say, okay, I think the thing that they're saying is this, I think the thing that they're saying is that. And content that does that minimizes perception gaps. So for example, what would today look like if we had changed the incentive of social media and YouTube from optimizing for engagement to optimizing to minimize perception gaps? And I'm not saying like that's the perfect answer, that would have fixed all of it. But you can imagine in, say, politics, whenever I recommend political videos, if it was optimizing just for minimizing perception gaps, what different world would we be living in today? And this is why we go back to Charlie Munger's quote, if you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. If the incentive was engagement, you get this sort of broken society where no one knows what's true and everyone lives in a different universe of facts. That was all predicted by that incentive of personalizing what's good for their attention. And the point that we're trying to really make for the whole world is that we have to bend the incentives of AI and of social media to be aligned with what would actually be safe and secure and for the future that we actually want.
Now, if you run a social media company and it's a public company, you have an obligation to your shareholders.
Yeah.
And is that part of the problem?
Of course.
That, yeah. So you would essentially be hamstringing these organizations in terms of their ability to monetize.
That's right. Yeah, and this can't be done without that. So to be clear, could Facebook unilaterally choose to say we're not going to optimize Instagram for the maximum scrolling when TikTok just jumped in and they're optimizing for the total maximizing infinite scroll, which by the way,
Yes.
we might want to talk about because one of Aza's accolades is
too strong. I'm the hapless human being that invented infinite scroll.
How dare you?
Yeah. After many years, sort of 3 laws of technology, and I wish I had known those laws when I started my career, because if I did, I might have done something different. Because I was really out there being like, hey, Google, hey, Twitter, use this technology, infinite scroll. I think it's better.
He actually gave talks at companies. Like he went around Silicon Valley, gave talks at Google, said, hey, Google, your search result page, you have to click like the page 2. What if you just have it just infinitely scroll and you get more search results? So you were really advocating for this.
I was. And so these are the rules I wish I knew, and that is the first law of technology. When you invent a new technology, you uncover a new class of responsibility. And it's not always obvious, right? Like, we didn't need the right to be forgotten until the internet could remember us forever. Or we didn't need the right to privacy to be like written to our law, into our constitution, until the very first mass-produced cameras, where somebody could start like taking pictures of you and publishing them and invading your privacy. So Brandeis, one of America's greatest legal minds, had to invent the idea of privacy and add it into our constitution. So, first law. When you invent a new technology, you uncover a new class of responsibility. Second law, if the technology confers power, you're going to start a race. And then the third law, if you do not coordinate, that race will end in tragedy.
And so with social media, the power that was invented, infinite scroll, was a new kind of power. That was a new kind of technology. And that came with a new kind of responsibility, which is I'm basically hacking someone's dopamine system and their lack of stopping cues, that their mind doesn't wake up and say, do I still want to do this? Because you keep putting your elbow in the door and saying, hey, there's one more thing for you. There's one more thing for you. So that when you're hacking that, there's a new responsibility saying, well, we have a responsibility to protect people's sovereignty and their choice. So we needed that responsibility. Then the second thing is infinite scroll also conferred power. So once Instagram and Twitter adopted this infinitely scrolling feed, it used to be, if you remember Twitter, get to the bottom, it's like, oh, click, load more tweets. You had to manually click that thing. But once they do the infinite scroll thing, do you think that Facebook can sit there and say, we're not going to do infinite scroll because we see that it's bad for people and it's causing doom scrolling? No, because infinite scroll confers power to Twitter at getting people to scroll longer, which is their business model. And so Facebook's also going to do infinite scroll, and then TikTok's going to come along and do infinite scroll. And now everybody's doing this infinite scroll, and if you don't coordinate the race will end in tragedy. So that's how we got in Social Dilemma, in the film, the race to the bottom of the brainstem, and the bottom of the brainstem and the collective tragedy we are now living inside of, which we could have fixed if we said, what if we change the rules so people are not optimizing for engagement, but they're optimizing for something else?